Thank you. All right. So thank you to Harvard Divinity School, to the Program for Evolutionary Spirituality, all of the program organizers and supporters for this phenomenal event. Really, it's an honor to be here among so many talented artists and scholars. So I never considered myself to be an artist before writing Guided. I have to say, though, like that deep release from creative self-expression, I was hooked. And I really didn't realize it at the time, but writing, I mean, it was the birthplace of a much more honest and fulfilling life, way of being in the world. So I'm going to read some excerpts from Guided. Dedicated to those in hiding, you're not alone. We often played together on the tiny old wooden floors of my childhood bedroom, overseen by Irish Catholic blessings on the walls. My imaginary friends and I communicated through an encrypted language. It was all our own. I was raised Catholic, adopted Sikhism, then married a Jew who has since become a Hasidic Orthodox Jew. Yet, to me, God has always been bigger than religion. Otherwise, how could I explain my inherent gift of glossolalia, otherwise known as speaking in tongues? Growing up, I never attended a charismatic church or other environment where people spoke in tongues, nor had I ever met anyone with this unusual gift. It just flowed through me my entire life. While growing up, the dialect automatically poured out of me if I became startled or awakened in the middle of the night. As I grew older, and no one around me communicated with the other side like I did, I became embarrassed, filled with shame. I was weird. I was different. And that was not okay. As an adult, the language spoke through me when I awakened from the anesthesia of surgery, or simply while cleaning the house, driving around town, or sitting calmly in meditation. I wanted to decipher the indiscernible sounds that were moving across my lips. It took many months of practicing meditative trance before I could control the flow of the energy and the spouting of words. I ultimately learned to regulate my entrance into and exit out of the peaceful yet otherworldly state. I became able to process small bits of the cryptic content. The progression was slow, difficult, and felt as though my mind was condensing something beyond limit or comprehension down into the narrow neuronal pathways of cognition. After several months of practice within a safely contained psychotherapeutic environment, I built and strengthened my resiliency to remain connected long enough to both receive and interpret full streams of communications. So in his book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, Rick Rubin said, art is a reflection of the artist's inner and outer world during the period of creation. So with that in mind, I'd like to take you on a journey to the 10-year period of time when I wrote Guided and when it wrote itself through me. This time in my life, I was still trying to prove to the world that I was normal, that I wasn't hiding anything strange at all. I was a behavioral healthcare executive. My ego was definitely running the show, despite wise and loving messages that flowed through me during the language encounters. The tension grew. The friction of wearing an outer mask so different from my internal essence became unbearable. So I turned to writing as a pressure release valve. I opened my laptop and poured myself onto the pages. Then I added in the transcriptions from the audio recordings of the broken tongue speak English trance sessions. And as I share my story with you today, this process of trying to get out of my own way, listen for these tiny interjections of tongue speak. Normally, speaking this language takes me into deep trance states, but that will not be the case today. I'll share it just for a brief second, only long enough to highlight the channeled content, while remaining in an ordinary state of consciousness with you here today, like this. Hi, intandolia viajach in diasisi shuvia kaliahandio de viavare fialaka. There is a great deal of spirit, of life force that travels with you and within all of creation. Drop into the sea of consciousness, of God, of all that is. We're here to help you connect, to help you remember. We are your support, your entourage, your counsel, your spiritual guides, your guardian angels. No matter what you call us, we are still the same. Each time the unknown words expressed themselves through me, a sense of warmth filled me. A soft, glowing light, both surrounded and emanated from within all at once. A soothing, peaceful euphoria signaled the connection was genuine. Time stood still, and I wanted to stay in that bubble for all eternity. Unfortunately, the sensations didn't last forever. As soon as the tongue speak subsided and I opened my eyes, awareness of my body and mind returned me back to normalcy. Wait, was this connection even legitimate? Was I really communicating with divine or angelic beings from the spirit realm? Intrigued, I kept coming back to hear what I would say. Understand that your heart is a vast opening, a portal that allows for communication with the soul. There's not a great distance to travel. In fact, there's no distance to travel at all. The unseen is right here. It is superimposed with the physical realm, intermingled with the things you can see, hear, touch, and feel. Both the spiritual and physical realms exist as one continuum. I would lose the wise clarity just hours after the session ended. It was as if a divergent part of my psyche opened during these encounters, but was shut off again as soon as the visitation ended. I wrestled with doubt, judgment, criticism about this occult practice. I lived in the South. This was a secret not to be exposed at dinner parties or shared in pre-meeting conference room chatter. Hi, I'm Siri. I slip into tongue seek and receive instructions from another dimension. No, thanks. Move on, people. Nothing to see here. I definitely needed to stay buttoned up as a normal mother and credentialed healthcare professional. But damn it, I wish this weird part of me wasn't so palpably soothing and wonderful. I longed to transcend the painful duality, to breathe easy and live freely and genuinely. It was agony holding this secret. My body was screaming right alongside my pained heart. I had regular headaches, my back ached constantly. We hear your cries of pain, sadness, and misery when you forget your spiritual connection. In these moments, you forget your soul is always present within you, waiting to awaken. You simply forget where the bridges are, and you forget how to use them. We want you to know how to return when you need to remember the part of yourself that is pure and connected with all. The pathways, doorways, and bridges are always available to you. Surrender, forgiveness, compassion, acceptance, and love are all tools to bridge you back. Dressed for success, a venti Starbucks Americano in one hand, a brown leather bag filled with notes for the day's meeting thrown over my shoulder, and an overcrowded key ring jiggling into position in the other hand, my daily race began. What was I racing towards exactly? Tucked somewhere outside of rational thought, I embraced the fantasy that successful professional achievements would carry me across the finish line, granting magical societal permission to live truthfully, finally incubated against judgment or rejection. I could finally arrive as the true and invincible version of myself with nothing left to prove or to hide. But like all wonderful fantasies, the imaginary finish line inched farther out on the horizon with each passing day. Arrival was nowhere in sight, just like it hadn't happened after my second marriage, my third academic degree, or my fifth house, each with more promise than the last. We invite you to consider security, my dear. Security is an important quality for you to contemplate. Where and when are you most secure? When your mind and heart are open and connected, you tap into the vibration of the cosmos. This allows you to experience unshakable trust and security. Compare these feelings to the false securities you have attached to in life, the impermanent anchors your mind misinterprets as resolute, such as your job, your clothes, your accomplishments, your connections. These things are unmatched to the depth of the resolute source of all creation. I was adept at putting everyone else's needs before my own. I moved through my days with an agreeable grin plastered on my face until no one was looking. Drinking a few glasses of red wine or cocktails had become my evening ritual. Once I was comfortably numb, I grabbed some chocolate and spaced out in front of a ridiculous Netflix drama to escape. It just felt too hard to take that next step. To come to terms with a hidden, occult part of myself I didn't understand, couldn't explain, and didn't know how to fit into my life. It was time to get courageous and move out of my misery, but the thought of coming out felt insurmountable. It took several years, but I finally quit drinking. And without numbing out, all that was left were my uncomfortable emotions, my trembling ego, and the awakening truth of who I was. You are a small child beginning to open her eyes. Do not worry about the next steps. Remember, this process is like a radio tuner. Be clear, go inside, towards your center. It is like tuning a dial. When you get to that place where your heart sings and the peace sits within you, stay there. Remember who you are. Explore who you are. The song of your heart you have been working so hard to protect and hide no longer requires hiding and protecting. It is safe to come out now. You are safe. Your soul can never be harmed. It is only the personality and the ego, the outer layers, that can be damaged. The soul cannot be destroyed. Lead with the soul. Over time, the sharp lines of duality between my two selves soften around the edges. Maybe my heart was healing. Maybe consciousness was emerging. Maybe I was more connected to God and to myself. So writing helped me to get out of my way. It also helped me to embrace this ostracized part of myself. But writing also helped me to ask really tough questions and get curious about this whole experience. And I had to admit, the ostensibly channeled information moving across my lips related to concepts I was already familiar with, including prayer, energy flow, embodied awareness. And this contrasts with tongue-speaking Christians who report semantics related to the Holy Spirit or Christ-centered principles. And yet throughout this process, I also learned that glossolalia has been documented for thousands of years across many different indigenous groups throughout history, related to shamanic rituals, healing ceremonies, and communication with the spiritual realm. Perhaps the simplest explanation is that the unexplainable numinous realm must remain just that, unknown. I have ultimately chosen to not only accept, but fully embrace the mystery. In the end, I can only offer this. In a world with so much pain, anxiety, suffering, disconnection, depression, and inadequate means of coping, let us consider the nurturance of the soul in healing. My journey may be unique in some ways, but I'm not special. Every one of us can connect with a magnificent power greater than ourselves. And every one of us deserves to live a life of integrated wholeness, no matter how different we are. Thank you.